Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey. And have you ever taken a pilgrimage? Or maybe you're thinking about going on a pilgrimage. Well, Debbie, Georgianni, and Adam Blai are about to share some practical tips for planning your journey. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning, Keith. Thank you so much for having us on The Next Right Thing. Adam and I really love these segments. We think they're very helpful. We're hearing from some of our Morning Joy listeners that they appreciate the topics that we are covering. So one of them today, this is more practical topic on preparing for a pilgrimage. Now, it is especially during this Jubilee Year of Hope, we are asked to make a pilgrimage, whether it's a pilgrimage just in your own town, your own city, your own state, or an international pilgrimage to really maybe go through the holy doors this year before that closes and in January, or to just go for some spiritual, just a reinforcement and to go deeper in your spiritual life. But planning pilgrimages takes some time. A lot of people just think, okay, I'll sign up and I'll go. And when I get there, it's just going to be this fantastic experience and it's going to be life-changing. And sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. So we thought we would go through some practical steps for our listeners when they are thinking about a pilgrimage, and also open up the phone lines, Adam, if you have tips or maybe some very quick suggestions on how to get the most out of your pilgrimage experience. And here's the number, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. Or if you own a tour company or something of that nature, if you want to give us some tips, we would love those. Okay, so Adam, we prepared a whole kind of little mini presentation on this, and I hope it helps our listeners.
Yeah. Pilgrimages just in general, for those wondering, like, well, why do you do this? Is it really important? I can go online and watch a video about the place. For me, Deb, I don't know about you. I've been on a few over the years, and they've really been impactful to me. For me, like the Holy Land, which was probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, but that's okay. It still pays dividends. I mean, to be in the physical places that are described in the Bible really grounds it in reality and gives you, if you're later like hearing a reading or, you're reading something and thinking about it, you can really picture exactly what it was like, because it's still basically the same in a lot of these places. So it pays a lot of dividends. So a few tips that I have, and maybe we could go back and forth. I'll throw out a couple, maybe you throw out a couple.
Sure.
So number one, I would say it's really important. Pick some place that's really important to you, that has a lot of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
These are big trips. These are expensive trips. You're going to, usually you're using up your vacation for the year. You're probably, investing a lot of money in this. Make sure it's something that's really important to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, something that you have some relationship with, or maybe it's a place that really speaks to some place you need to grow. Let it be, spiritually important, someplace that you're hoping to really spiritually grow from, not just I'm going to be a tourist and take a bunch of pictures and then come home. My advice would be to make it spiritual goals. Go ahead.
Well, and let me comment on that. A lot of times people can save money on a pilgrimage, especially if you're with a tour group, right? If you buddy up with somebody, so you get a friend to share the room with you and things like that. And sometimes this happened to me. I've had friends say to me, well, we're going to this place, this exotic place, and it has these sacred sites. It really didn't speak to me. But they wanted to save money because I could share the room with them and stuff like that. I understand that. Now, I was tempted to go because it is a pilgrimage, and of course it's a, the Catholic sites were extraordinary. But you're absolutely spot on. It didn't speak to me. It wasn't a devotion that I was drawn to. It wasn't something that I said, oh, I have to see, like I did with the Holy Land. I wanted to go to Israel so badly. And so I would have done anything to get there. So I agree with you. You have to be, there should be, you should be drawn to it somehow. But I will tell you, I have a friend who never really had a big interest in going to Medjugorje, and she was asked to room with somebody on a trip many years ago to Medjugorje, and it changed her life.
Mm, interesting. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like sometimes it's what speaks to you, like, oh, I've always wanted to see that, or oh, I'm really into that saint and that's where they're from. But sometimes it's a place where you really need to grow.
Right.
And when you pray and reflect on it, like you may feel that too and realize that also. So yeah, you might say like, oh, it doesn't immediately jump off the page to me. But I never really understood those visionaries or that story about Mary. Maybe this will make it click for me. Like for me, for instance, I have some friends that are originally from Mexico that are here in the States, dear friends down in Texas, and I had never really thought about going down to the Our Lady of Guadalupe, like the big center, and I believe it's a basilica. See how little I know about it. Yeah, in Mexico City. I'd never really thought about that. I've not been to the Marian sites. I haven't been to Lourdes. I haven't been to Fatima. I haven't been to the Mexican sites. But I realized as we were chatting, like, oh, this is a real gap in my travels. Maybe there's something really important for me there.
Right, but you have to realize something too, Adam. You grew up in the Philadelphia, and then you
Suburbs.
reside, right. So you're in Pennsylvania, and I grew up in New Jersey. And keep this in mind, because I remember this vividly. When we were growing up, it was not a big thing to go out west and to go to Mexico. We went more to Canada. Canada was so there was a lot of talk about things that like Montreal and things of that nature. So there was a lot of French influence where we grew up. There was a lot of other of the religious sites that kind of came into our understanding in our formation in Catholicism when we grew up back east. Okay, out here where I live in the Southwest, of course, Mexico City, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Of course, I mean Our Lady of Our Lady of Guadalupe is she's our patroness for the Diocese of Phoenix. Okay, so there's a big emphasis. I do think it does matter where you grow up too.
And that brings me to the next thing. It matters who you go with. So, I think you should, like obviously, if you know a local, like I got to go to Poland. A friend, of a friend has been a local for a long time. We stayed with them. They took us around. That's like, obviously, that's a super big advantage and super relaxed and wonderful. But usually you're going with a company and somebody who's kind of the tour leader. Reflect on that person, pick that person well, pick the right tour to that place well, because when I was in the Holy Land, it was a priest friend leading it, and Deb, it was like we were praying 24/7. Like when you're on the bus between places, the whole bus is praying the rosary. We were at mass every day. We were stopping and meditating in places every day. I mean, by the fifth day, I had prayed more in those 5 days, than I had ever prayed in any 5 days in my life by far.
Right.
Because the priest was really oriented to that. And that was really the focus. So you want to figure out what's the focus of this. It's okay if it's more of like a touristy, we're going to see these places and you figure out how to relate with them on your own. Other people are going to be more directive and say I'm going to give you things to do and these are kind of expectations so that you get the most out of this. You want to get a feel for what the trip is going to be like.
Okay, so I have some tips. You ready? Okay, if you're going to go with a tour guide, a tour company, and like you said, pick a very reputable company with a wonderful tour guide that's experienced. I mean, obviously there's trouble and there's tension in the Middle East, but when things calm down, if there's some peace, I really feel that if you can afford it, everyone should make a trip to the Holy Land and to Rome, because it's our birthright, right? It's everything. It's everything we could imagine. It's so incredible, especially if you go to both Holy Land and to Rome, because it's a continuation. You go back to the Jewish roots, and then it's a continuation, and it allows you to feel the scripture come alive. It just absolutely does that. And I that's my personal opinion. If you can afford it, I think it's because I took those 2 trips and it has been completely spiritually life changing.
Yeah.
But here's what I would suggest. I would take a 200-mile radius of where you live right now, 200 miles, draw a circle, do a radius around where you live, and find the sacred sites and monasteries and special places 200 miles around where you live. And why do I say that? Because I was so upset when we took a tour, when we took a pilgrimage with the Stand Tall group, when we went on the Mercy and Martyrs tour, and it was Stockbridge, Massachusetts for the Divine Mercy Shrine, Adam, and it was Orisville, New York, the North American Martyrs in Orisville, New York. Now, Adam, you're not too far from Pennsylvania, from Orisville, New York. I wasn't too far from northern New Jersey. Do you know I grew up 18 years in New Jersey, never heard of the North American Martyrs Shrine. It was so upsetting when I got there, and I said, are you kidding me? This is golden. This is a spiritual, golden, unbelievable, precious jewel in the middle of upstate New York. Why aren't people all around New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio coming to the North American Martyrs Shrine? And they said to me, your guess is as good as mine. We don't know. We try to get the word out here that this is amazing. Yet we ask, Saint Kateri, and we ask all these wonderful, incredible martyrs who are so rich in our history of the United States, and yet we don't even know that the shrine is there, and it's in driving distance.
Yep.
Okay, so that's just my point. You could go there, and it would cost hardly anything, right?
Yeah. We're the same way with St. Anthony's Relic Chapel here in Pittsburgh. Nobody here knows about it, but tour buses arrive like 3 or 4 days out of the week from across the country of people excited to see basically the largest collection of relics the public can see outside of the Vatican, and that's not really available to the public. So, in the world, and nobody here knows that it's here.
Exactly.
It's just the way it is.
Right. So look in your own backyard, about 200 miles, so that you can drive a driving distance. You can do it in a full day. You could do it over one night. But it's amazing to just know what's right there. Within driving distance before you, like you said, Adam, because it can be very expensive. We do have an email question coming in. We'll get to that. We'll also talk more about the tips about planning a pilgrimage, especially to stay safe. But for now, we're sending it back to Keith.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And yes, we're going to take a quick little break here. On the other side, like Debbie mentioned, we're going to answer a question from the email and tips for planning your specific journey, how to make the most of it, and staying safe. Very important stuff. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and here on the final segment of The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgianni and Adam Blai, talking all about pilgrimages and how to plan safely your journey and how to make the most of it spiritually and, of course, practically. Debbie and Adam, take it away.
Thank you so much, Keith. This is a very good segment. I think we're learning how to plan a pilgrimage. We did have an email come in, Adam, from Jennifer in Falls Church, Virginia, and she's listening on Guadalupe Radio Network online. And Jennifer asked this question, Adam. It's a very good question, and this is another reason why you want to plan ahead, because if you want to bring items with you or you want to buy items over there, you need to know how to get them blessed and things of that nature. So Jennifer asked this question, Adam. I'm visiting the Chapel of the Lady of the Miraculous Medal in Paris and bringing medals with me. How close do I need to be to the incorrupt body of St. Catherine Labouré for the medals to be a third-class relic?
Well, in order to make a third, so people that don't know, first-class relic is actually part of the person's body, like a piece of their hair. Second-class relic is something that they owned, like their religious habit or something like that. A third-class relic is something that is physically touched to a first or a second class relic. So just getting close to a tomb doesn't make something a third class relic.
Right, but it's my understanding though, if you can actually touch the tomb, right? Because it's my understanding, like with Padre Pio, when I went to go in San Giovanni Rotondo, and he's right behind the glass, and I also was told with the glove, it's the same thing with the glove. It's behind the glass. If you touch your medal or your prayer card to that becomes a third class relic. That's what the priest told us. Now, is that true?
Basically, yes. So like for instance, if there's a first class relic, it's going to be in what's called a teca, which is a little container that's sealed. You can't pry it open and actually, touch your fingertip to the actual piece of bone in there. The closest you can get is touching the glass window of that little container, right?
Right.
So unless you're a person that's repairing relics for the church, you're never going to be physically actually touching these relics. And so, so like you could think of it in the same way. Touching the window on the tomb or touching the tomb is the closest you can get. I'm just saying, like, just getting close
is not,
So,
right.
So physical contact seems to be the rule.
Okay, so here's what I would suggest, Jennifer, that just to help you with this, because I totally understand why you want St. Catherine Labouré third class relics for these medals. I would as well, absolutely. What I would do is talk to who's ever there at the church, at the chapel, and ask them about it. I would say to them, I brought these medals. I want them to be third class relics. They have ways of bringing out like a relic of the saint or something of that nature, where these medals can be touched too. Because that happened to us in Rome. We brought medals to Rome, and we wanted them to be third class relics, and they presented a path for us to do that. So would you say that's a good idea, Adam?
Yeah. I mean, I just, from everything I understand, I would, if you can do that, I would do that. Often at these shrines, they will have holy cards that have a tiny bit of cloth contained in them, and it says right on there, touch to the body of so-and-so. Those are prepared not when the public is there, but they're prepared usually when you're doing maintenance or you open things up to clean them and things like that, where they'll take cloth and actually, briefly lay it on the body of the saint, or what's holding their remains. So asking for one of those, now, of course, those aren't sold because you can't sell a relic. And by the way, if somebody's trying to sell you a relic at some place, like, that's strictly forbidden by church law. That's a big no-no. And that's not a moral or ethical person. That's not somebody who's being a good Catholic. You should not participate in the relic trade. And most of the things that are sold, by the way, are fakes. That's just a side public service announcement. So, yes, Deb, if you can manage that, it's great. Don't feel like you have to make that happen and you're going to, berate them until they do it.
Sure.
But yeah.
But one thing I would say to those pilgrims that are going to go on an international tour, ask questions. Ask. Don't, if somebody just says, well, you have to stand over here, say, well, is there any way I can get closer to view the incorrupt body of the saint? You can ask questions. Believe it or not, if you ask enough questions, I'm not saying to be a pain and really, upset the tour, but you can ask enough that they will really help, and they'll accommodate the best they can. Usually these pilgrimages know, they want to serve those that are coming on these tours. And so you can just ask. You don't have to necessarily just go, in a certain direction just because you were told to. Just ask a couple questions. That's the first thing. The second thing is I want to just say this really quickly because this is so important. Please make sure you plan, especially if you're bringing little ones on a international pilgrimage. Plan ahead. Make sure you have your own medical first aid kit with you, because when you go to some of these other countries, they don't serve those that get ill or sick or get injured the same way we are used to in America. And so you just want to make sure you plan. And just bring a little first aid kit with you, and also know the hospitals in the area or urgent cares of things of that nature, where if God forbid there is a medical emergency, you know where to go that's safe, and you can get in and out pretty quickly. You're not stuck there. Because I had a friend who got very ill and then fell, and they were in the hospital the entire time of the pilgrimage and had to be flown home. They never even got to the pilgrimage, and it was a mess. So you just want to prepare ahead of time. Just think of things, 7 steps down the road, and see if you can prepare just to, stay safe for yourself and for your little ones if you're going to bring little ones. And also bring your medication.
Yeah, you're bringing up a great point, and I've run into this a few times, and I've had friends run into this. Do some research and plan ahead on how the medical system works where you're going. What would I do if I got really sick really fast? How do they typically handle all of these things? What if you plan something 6 months ahead of time and you break your ankle right before you go and you're going to be in a wheelchair? Is that doable? Plan ahead for that. I had a need with a friend I was taking to Rome. They broke their ankle right before we went. Well, it turns out, thank goodness, the laws in Italy are wonderful for people with disabilities, and it was very doable. And there was a wonderful company that rented wheelchairs. But like the issue of, can you rent a wheelchair? That's a big question. And if you can, do they allow you to take it on the whole pilgrimage and return it a week later? Or is it only to be used right there? All kinds of little questions. And yeah, like, how does over-the-counter medicine work where I'm going?
Right.
It's really smart to take some basics like your aspirin or whatever, because sometimes you just can't find the equivalent there.
Well, and I know it sounds simple, but I'm just telling you, this happened to us. Marty was in Assisi, and he decided to do this little race with a couple of the priests, and he fell on the cobblestone ground, and he hurt himself. And we went into the hotel in Assisi, Italy, and we said, can we have a bag of ice? And they don't do that in Italy. So like something simple like carrying Ziploc bags with you, so that if you can find somebody who'll give you ice, put it in a Ziploc bag and make your own ice pack. I mean, that's what we're used to here in America. So there's all sorts of things like that. And these are little things you may think, why did you do a whole segment on this? Well, this is the year, with this Jubilee Year of Hope, that people are considering making a pilgrimage. And we want our joyful pilgrim warriors to be safe and happy and thrilled about their pilgrimage, and have it be spiritually life-changing. Right, Adam?
Yep. And my final thing, Deb, if this is your first place in a new country and you don't know anybody local, I really would go with a reputable tour company and a guide. I wouldn't go alone and wing it unless you're a very experienced traveler and you're good at that kind of thing. For your first time or two there, go with people that know the terrain. Yeah.
Yep. Amen to that. Thank you, Adam. We got to make room for Mr. Dave Palmer because he is somewhere special today, and we'll send it back to Keith.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And yes, if you did not catch the previous episode of The Spirit World, make sure to find it. It was their June Open Forum, and it was incredible. They tackled so many great questions. So if you weren't able to watch it or listen to it, I highly recommend going over to YouTube or your favorite podcast app and search The Spirit World Podcast or just The Spirit World. And don't forget, this Saturday, they'll be back at it again, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. Coming up next, don't go anywhere, because we're going to be thinking out loud, not in the typical place that we're typically thinking out loud, in Medjugorje, right after this break. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.